Hey, what's up, everybody? Today's episode is with Brandon Renfro, he's in the National Guard. He's done some live-in flip action, which we'll talk about later on, but he deals with the distribution and retirement side of financial planning, which is a piece that is just so incredibly important that we often forget. So we're going to dig into the famed 4% rule, what it is, why it matters, how to adjust it, and some other key factors for planning for your retirement so that you can enjoy life once you're done building wealth and working for a living. You can actually relax and enjoy life. If this is your first time joining the community, thanks for listening. If not, welcome back. Show notes are found at FromMilitaryToMillionaire.com/podcast. Now relax and enjoy the show. And subscribe.
You're listening to the Military Millionaire Podcast, a show about real estate investing for the working class. Stay tuned as we explore ways to help you improve your finances, build wealth through real estate, and become a person that is worth knowing.
Hey guys, on this podcast we talk a lot about the roadblock to success for military members in getting started in real estate investing. For many of us, the barriers of time, location, and not having the right knowledge keep us from building wealth while serving our country. Well, let me tell you about Storehouse 310 Ventures. They get it. Storehouse 310 Ventures is owned by two active duty naval officers that love to make investing fun, lucrative, and have a passion for education, theirs and yours alike. They offer full turnkey rental properties in a market where the numbers make sense, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Yes, Milwaukee, home to the almost 2018 division titled Milwaukee Brewers, the well-known Miller Brewing Company, and a lot of delicious cheese. Storehouse 310's properties are fully renovated, leased, and have property management in place. Through their rigorous analysis and selection process, they do everything possible to ensure each rental property meets their high standards and offers fantastic returns. Storehouse 310s allows you to invest with confidence while you are living out of state. They have a network of lenders, insurance companies, contractors, a title company, and much more to serve you all along the way. There is absolutely no reason not to get started when you have the right teams and system in place. David and Stu, the owners of Storehouse 310, have been investing themselves for over 15 years. They are on a mission to help as many active duty, reserves, and military veterans create financial freedom through the power of real estate investing. They are honest, transparent, and they prioritize service and giving. They have even committed to give the first 10% of their profits to partner nonprofit organizations that support veteran causes. For more information about their program, send an email to podcast@storehouse310turnkey.com. Again, that is podcast@storehouse310turnkey.com. Tell David and Stu you heard about them through the Military Millionaire Podcast, and they will get you going down the right path. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Dave with Military to Millionaire, and I'm here with Brandon Renfro, who spent some time in the Army as an officer in the infantry side of the house, and now he is in the reserves and teaches personal finance with a specialty focus on distribution and retirement stuff, which is really cool because I've had some finance nerds on the podcast with myself, but I have not talked the retirement piece very much, which is that's the piece that really matters, right? You gotta be able to have a closing game in life or it's gonna suck. So without further ado, Brandon, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, yep. Thanks for having me, man. You got it. That's me. I am an Army officer. Actually, my entire time has been as reserve status in the National Guard. Been in for, 10, almost 11 years now. And as you said, my civilian career, I'm a finance professor. I teach right now at East Texas Baptist University. I've been a full-time professor since, 2015. Taught for a few years at a community college before that. That's me. I National Guard, teach full-time, and then I have a retirement planning practice where, as you said, deal with retirement issues mainly on the distribution side is my focus, my specialty. And that's me. I've got a wife and two kids, a 4-month-old boy. It's pretty awesome. And a 6-year-old, about to be 6-year-old girl here in a couple of weeks. So loving it.
That's exciting. So what got you into being a professor of finance and the retirement side specifically? Like you're a little young to be focused on that age, but I like it.
Yeah, no, dude. So at the risk of losing any cool points I ever had, it's just, I think it's exciting. So when I went to undergrad, I kind of typical thing, I guess, knew generally what I wanted to do, something in business, but definitely did not show up to undergrad thinking I was going to be a finance professor one day or even a finance major. So part of the curriculum where I went at Southern Arkansas University, there was a class that was kind of like an intro to business, but it was called American Enterprise. And part of that class was a professor from each of the areas that come around and kind of do like a round robin, hey, this is, my area. I'm the marketing person. I'm going to tell you kind of what marketing is today. So the finance guy came and I will never forget this lecture. Dr. Ashby, and I'm still friends with him today, but he did a lecture where he showed, how you could very easily, just investing in index funds, consistent savings, dollar cost averaging over a career, become a millionaire if you would just save consistently. And I think the number that he used was $2,000 a year from the time you were like 18 to 65. And man, I thought he was lying. I went back and checked the numbers. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was hooked, from that point on. Still didn't know that I'd be a finance professor, but definitely was hooked on finance. So, explain why you like your hobby. I really don't know. It was just exciting. Which, yeah, you're right. It's not a normal 18-year-old kid's, source of excitement, but I thought it was the coolest thing.
I mean, I like numbers, so I get that. I will say that you use fancy words like professor and planner, and I just call us all finance nerds, which is probably like the way to go about it. But I think there's a huge difference between like a financial planner and a finance nerd, and I think that's like, people are always like, oh, that's kind of a derogatory term. Like, no, it's totally not, because anyone who loves numbers is like, yep, that's me. I will sit around and mess with, look at me censoring myself, mess with Excel docs and random spreadsheets. Like, but the one piece of my entire like passive income real estate side that I have not turned over is my bookkeeping, because I just enjoy tracking the numbers. And it's a huge waste of time. It's like an hour a month that I don't need to do. I can be almost completely passive, but I just enjoy it. And I think there's just people out there so I can see how you would get into it and be like, oh my God, compound interest is amazing, and just enjoy that.
Yeah. No. So majored in finance. Again, at the time, had not decided that I was going to go be a finance professor after undergrad. I did go to work for a short while as a financial planner at Wells Fargo, and during that time, I, had the GI Bill. I'd already joined the Guard, and so I was going to get my MBA simply because the GI Bill, and why let that go to waste, right? Might as well get an MBA. So about halfway through the MBA, I realized that I was kind of getting sad about the idea of school being over, which again felt odd, right? I'm like, man, you should be happy that's over, like why, So I just went and talked to one of my professors about it and thought, man, like, tell me about being an adjunct. What's this part-time teaching thing about? And so decided I was going to go ahead, get the 18 graduate hours that was needed so that I could, maybe teach a class, one or two a semester, and, do the financial planning thing. And taught my first class. It was a Principles of Economics class. And it was during that first semester, I thought, I've got it backwards. I need to finish this out, go get a PhD and do this full time. And, I can always come back to practicing later, maybe, on the side. So like I do now, part-time planner, full-time professor. And so that's what I did. Don't regret it. I just wish I would have seen, I guess hindsight's 2020, if I would have seen the end result now, I guess would have went more directly for it, but don't regret the path I took, and I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, so we had this like great thing going on where we were bonding on my finance nerd definition, and then you said something about enjoying school, and I lost you.
Okay, not friends anymore.
No, I enjoy the teaching side of things, so I can see why you would enjoy that. I don't think I could ever say that I got done with a class in school at any level and said, I could do with some more of this. That's why I have an E in front of my pay grade. So that being said, why retirement?
Man, I don't know. I think So part of it, like I said, is just the analogy I use all the time is, right, like, so picture somebody that likes skateboarding, have them explain why they like skateboarding. I don't know, it's just fun, so there's that part of it. I can't really explain, it's just interesting. But then too, I think one thing that gets me stuck on it is realizing how important it is. You think about so many things in life, you can get a second chance on, right? Or, you can delay it a little bit, or retirement's really not that way. You really get the one chance to do it. And although I'm generally not a super serious guy, I think deep down probably that's part of what's driving it. Is one, it's interesting, and two, to know it is so serious.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the key things that a youngster should do from kind of an early age when thinking about retirement? I asked that, and I know there's no right answer, wrong answer, right? But everyone's system or strategy is different. But I asked that thinking maybe like 25, because most 18-year-olds aren't thinking about it, although I wish they were.
Yeah.
Because it is something that often does not get thought about until way too late because it's not sexy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and man, that's a good question. And you're right. There really is no universal, correct, even set of answers. These are the things you should do. But that being said, that's kind of where you find that right answer in. You just simply start, right? So you have to save. You've got to start saving some money. So you could either, which and I always kind of qualify this statement with, don't hear me saying just wing it. Don't hear me saying just go blind. But if you're on the other end of that spectrum where you're more likely to paralyze yourself with over-analysis, stop and just start saving. So you could agonize all day long about how much should I save? Well, how much can you save? Save that, or should it be in a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA or the TSP? Like, well, just pick one. Again, don't get me wrong. Yeah, take the time, parse through the detail, but barring that, or if you're going to get bogged down in the analysis and do nothing, just opt for doing something. So that's huge. That compound interest. If you start now, it's got more time to compound than if you start tomorrow, which is more time than if you start a year from now. So that really is the big thing, is just start. Save as much as you can, as often as you can.
Are you a TSP fan, or is there a preferred index fund 401k that you like?
No, so I am a big fan of indexing in general. And for that reason, yes, do like the TSP. I think the TSP funds are very cost effective and very efficient. So no, I think the TSP is a good, a good plan, a good system.
Let me unmute myself before I start talking. For those of you who heard him mention earlier, the $2,000 a year, right? What I tell people all the time is, like, at a bare minimum for your entire career in the military, anytime you're in, you should be putting 10% away in your TSP. And if you do that, that's your $2,000 a year for most of us. Maybe not the first year. Maybe it's not. Well, actually, if you put 10% in and you get the BRS 5% match, it'll be that $2,000 a year. And then if you continue with that, and I would say when you get a pay raise, up your TSP 1% or 2% every year. And I botched that. I put 10% in my TSP, but I left that crap in the G fund for, and the years that I joined, you'll appreciate this. It was, so from 2008 to 2014, 15, my money sat in the G fund and earned like 1% to 3% interest.
Yeah.
The funds that I'm currently in earned an average of like 18 to 30% interest. So I did the math one day, and I think I'm out like 25 grand just by leaving it in the wrong fund over that time. But I still have a substantial amount in there. I still have time to recover it. So if you just do 10% at least in your TSP and put it in the life cycle funds, you don't have to worry about it if you're not a finance guy or whatever. But just do that, like, before you even think about anything else. If you just do that, like, you're already winning the game of finance, and you're never going to know it's missing if you started it right away.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, and on that note, actually, so you talked about the G fund. That has in the past been probably the biggest source of contention for me, was the overwhelming number of people who, because they weren't finance nerds and because they didn't, like you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yep.
Kind of the deep, and you'll probably remember better than I do. Historically, the G fund has been the default fund, right? Like your funds were automatically invested.
Up until I think last year was the first time.
Yeah.
Within the last year or two is when it finally decided to go life cycle as a default.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a huge, improvement. Yeah, that was probably my biggest, like I said, source of, angst with the TSP was that, hey, here's a 20-year-old, let's stick him in the G fund. Like, well,
you can afford a little risk.
Yeah.
It's never lost money. Yeah, but it's not really ever made money either. It doesn't outpace inflation at all. So. Yeah, no, and that's again another. So if the biggest thing I would tell that young person just starting out is just start. Save as much as you can as soon as you can. That next part is what you just hit on was so there's always this backstop of don't take too much risk. Don't take more risk than you can handle, and so that you put yourself in a position to overreact and do something stupid when the market drops. But don't be afraid to test yourself. Riding that G fund out for 30 or 40 years is going to hurt a lot more in the long run than if you'll just accept some volatility over the course of that time. Yeah. Absolutely. Especially, and I tell people this all the time, although risk is definitely not something to be just taken for granted, especially for us active duty folks, at a young age, you can afford to take an extreme amount of risk, more so than probably the rest of the nation. Because let's say you're a young barracks guy, like you lose every penny to your name investing in the stock market or real estate or whatever, because you went all out. Everything went wrong. You lose everything. You still have a barracks room. You still have free chow hall. You still have free medical. Like, you're fine. That's it. Yeah. You lost your money. Okay, start over. Big whoop. Like, you're not on the streets. You got nothing to worry about. Now, I say that if you have a security clearance, you might have something to worry about if you go way too far off the deep end. But usually the people who buy the really expensive car they can't make payments on are more at risk for losing their security clearance than the guy who dumps 80% of his paycheck in the stock market and loses it because you're not in debt to anyone. You just lost your money. So you're safer losing all your money in the stock market than in a Mustang. But anyway.
Yep. Yeah, no, valid point.
That to say, don't overdo the risk, but I use that as my justification because I'm a huge risk guy. But yeah, I've mellowed out since then. But okay, so we haven't even touched on it yet. I want to touch on it. We're probably going to spend a decent amount of time talking on it. Could you explain the 4% rule?
Yeah. So that's like I said, with distributions, kind of my area. That's generally the kind of go-to rule of thumb for how much you can distribute from a portfolio, right? So the application here is, okay, I've retired. I have this chunk of money that I've saved up, right? And so how much can I withdraw from that? So the 4% rule says, you can withdraw 4% of that balance and then adjust it each year for inflation after that. And you can reasonably expect that you won't run out of money, which of course is, kind of the significant risk in retirement, right? You wind up, you're, 85 years old, not quite dead yet, but you've run out of money. Not a good condition to be in. So that 4% rule comes from a famous study in the area from Bill Bingham. So he did this historical study. He said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at rolling periods of 30 years. So it took this 30-year period to represent a normal retirement. And so I said, okay, if I roll through these 30-year periods, what is the most that you could have withdrawn in a historical context and never depleted the portfolio in that 30-year period? And that's what this 4% comes from. It's what he called the safe max, the safe maximum withdrawal rate. So if you had withdrawn 40 or 4%, 30 years, you never ran out of money. And so we kind of take that rule and say, okay, that's what we can kind of plan for, in retirement. So if somebody retires today and they're using the 4% rule, we're going to say, okay, I'll take this balance, I'll withdraw 4% of it in the first year, and the next year I'll, adjust for inflation and, continue to take that distribution. And so that's fine enough, right? It's a rule of thumb built on some historical research. But my statement on the 4% rule is to always, for one, caution yourself. Note that rule was developed in history, right? So the historical context, it worked, but we don't know that the conditions of the past will repeat in the future, right? So it's really only a guide. Just because it's worked in the past doesn't mean it will work in the future. So there's the big qualification up front. But then two, always think about also the different parameters that were in place in the study. So for one, the big one, the 30-year retirement, right? So if early retirement is kind of a popular thing right now, right? So say you're 45 or 50 years old, hopefully, unless you're just the most pessimistic person, or you have some legit reason to believe that it'll be, hopefully you're planning on a longer than a 30-year retirement, right? So if you think about how that would adjust, if we're saying we're going to hold that 4% rule, use that, to kind of look into the future there. Well, if we need a longer withdrawal period, we would have to adjust that withdrawal rate downward some. And there's no hard and fast, this is how much you should, reduce that withdrawal rate, when you increase the expected length of retirement. There's no hard and fast mechanism, but it's the relationship that you should, just keep in mind, right? So if I have a longer retirement period and relying on this 4% rule, I'll have to adjust that downward. You can flip that to the other side too, though, right? You work until you're 75 years old. More power to you, but you probably don't have a 30-year retirement that you need to plan for. So you can withdraw more than 4%, right? So just always think about those adjustments that you need to make, because again, it is just a rule of thumb. Although there's nothing intrinsically wrong with the way the rule is constructed, just recognize that there are parameters that will change for each given investor. We talked about risk too, right? So one of the things that being looked at in the study was the composition of the portfolio. And so he tested a pretty broad range. I can't recall off the top of my head all the different portfolios, but a pretty broad range of asset allocations. And actually what he found was that portfolios that had 50 to 75%, or maybe it was 80% of the portfolio in equities, those were actually the portfolios that did better. So as you looked at portfolios that had less than 50% in equity, so they're more conservative, a higher percentage of bonds, those portfolios weren't able to sustain as high of a withdrawal rate as portfolios that had a little more risk. You could go the other direction too, though, right? So above that 75, 80% in equity, we started to see that the risk was, you kind of didn't make up for the risk, right? So the fluctuation in the portfolio kept you from sustaining such a high withdrawal rate. So, think about your risk tolerance and how you plan to invest. That's going to affect the withdrawal rate. And usually what I tell people there is to, there's risk tolerance, but that's kind of driven in part by education. So if you think you're uncomfortable with a given asset allocation, sometimes you can educate yourself into a level of comfort. So in the context of that 4% rule, I think if you're coming into retirement and you're thinking, well, all bond portfolio, that's all I can stomach. Well, if you've learned that, okay, great. Again, don't overextend yourself. Don't take a risk you're not comfortable with. But if you're just doing that without any base of education or experience, just the idea of risk, and that's it. Well, hey, maybe you can kind of educate yourself really on what that risk means, and see that, in a lot of cases, really you're taking on more risk once you flip into that retirement period by being, all bonds, no equity. So, something to think about.
Yeah. And, obviously, like you said, it all depends. It all fluctuates. There's so many factors, but I happen to know a guy, and I'm not going to name him on here just because, that's finance is personal, but he's been retired now, I think 17, 18 years from the Navy, right? And he did the 4% thing. His portfolio has grown every year. I mean, maybe not every year, but over that time period, much outpaced what he's been withdrawing. And the man lives in a very expensive place in the world, no problems. And honestly, like, he's in a position where it just keeps growing faster than he needs to pull money out. And he's been like gifting money, like his inheritance early or whatever, to say, hey, here you go. And like, it's really cool to watch, because it's like, oh, there's a proof source. And obviously it could depend, but I mean, we're saying 17 years in 2019, which means that, oh, that's right, there was a huge crash that the world ended and everybody lost their shit. And he made it through that, doing the withdrawal thing without freaking out. So
yeah,
it's doable if you budget right.
Yeah, and two, actually, you kind of hit on another point there that might be a little deeper, but it's worth mentioning. So if you think about, again, then what that 4% even represents, right? It's a safe withdrawal rate. So if you look at all of the withdrawal rates, that you could use, what we're saying is, from this study that Bingham did, 4% was the safe withdrawal rate. You never depleted the portfolio. Well, if you think about you never depleted the portfolio, think of all of the other instances where you really never came close. And so, in fact, in most cases, you would have started with more money, or you would have ended with more money than you even started with, because you're not, depleting that portfolio. And so there's some trade-off to think about there too, right? If you look at obviously that's a good position to be in. You're not running out of money. But the other thing, like for your friend that you're thinking about, that also means he could have. Of course, hindsight's 20/20, right? That's the whole reason you're being safe here, is because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. But in hindsight, he now realizes he could have lived, a lot snazzier lifestyle than he did. So I'm not saying that's even a goal, right? I'm not saying push for that, but just that is certainly one of the byproducts, of quote unquote the 4% rule, or any safe withdrawal rate, is, it's by nature, it's going to be a relatively low withdrawal rate, because that's where you get safety from, is that lower rate. So that's actually a very good point, and very relevant to the discussion of the 4% rule.
Yeah, I mean, let's just think about the magnitude of that for those of you who are worried about retirement, or who have parents worried about retirement, or helping your parents survive retirement. I mean, it's a very real possibility that things go wrong all the time. And a lot of people get ready for retirement, realize, crap, we're not there. Now what? So just think about the magnitude and how powerful it would be for you to have a retirement account, have a withdrawal rate where you're able to survive off the money that your account is providing for you. And then, holy shit, you die and it's worth more than when you retired. Like, talk about a nest egg to pass on to your kids, your grandkids, your favorite charity, the government and taxes, like whatever, however you choose to do that. But that's really, really cool to think that you could be retired for 30, 40, 50 years, and say you retired with $2 million in a bank account, which is doable. I'm not saying that's not an absurd number, guys. You retire with $1 million, $2 million in a bank account, and then 30 years later, it's worth $5, $10 million or $3, $4 million or whatever. And you're like, this is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
What do you think? Ooh, and I'm going to flip this, and this is just going to be one of those questions that's like totally not answerable, but it's an opinion one. So just a forewarning for those, this is an opinion. I'm going to say it for him. What do you think is the biggest mistake you can make in retirement planning? I have no idea what you're going to answer on that.
No, we did not.
I was like, oh, that's a flip script. That's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, the biggest.
Or I don't know, a huge, whatever. Obviously, not saving is a pretty bad one, but.
Yeah. Okay. So, one, I think, is not thinking about that transition period hard enough. So, and I don't think it's, some people do it, without, they kind of make their oown bed, right? Like they're just being irresponsible and they don't think. But to some extent, I don't think that we collectively, as either educators or the finance industry or whoever, put enough emphasis on that transition period. So if you think about, you're like, we spent the first several minutes of our discussion talking about you're saving. Well, when you flip the script to, okay, I'm retired now and I'm withdrawing, you're reversing the flow. You're reversing. You're flipping that coin right to the other side. And so I think a big risk that people take is they get used to saving for, decades, right? 20, 30, 40 years of a career. And they don't stop and think about that transition period. There's asset allocation to think about. There's budgeting to think about. There's some pretty key risks, which, one of the ones that I always address is the sequence of return risk. So when we talk about asset allocation, as you get kind of near retirement and then shortly after the point of retirement, right? So maybe 5 or 10 years before to 5 or 10 years after, and you can kind of define that range. It varies, right? But that kind of period around retirement, you're very, very susceptible to market performance. So if the market takes a big hit shortly before or shortly after, and again, shortly being, kind of broadly defined as several years before, several years after, that has a very outsized effect on, your retirement. So you mentioned the 08, market a moment ago. So if you retired, say 07, 08, 09, somewhere around in that time frame, or, even, as far back as 05, whatever, that 08 crash kind of hits you a lot harder than it does for somebody who's, even if, you were invested during 08, but if you're still working now and you're not retired, well, you recouped, you didn't start taking distributions from that portfolio, especially those early distributions. Conversely, if you've already been retired for 10 or 15 years and then that 08 market hit you, it didn't affect you as bad as it did those people that it hit right kind of at that critical moment. And so that's, I guess, if you ask me on the spot for one single mistake, is not adequately preparing for that sequence risk, either late late career or early retirement.
I like it. I'm gonna throw another curveball at you because that was fun, and I came up with I thought of something while you were talking. So this is something we definitely didn't talk about, and I'm genuinely curious. But if you don't have an opinion, we don't have to talk about this. This is something I'm noticing as a trend these days. So I'll just do it. We'll play the role play game. I'm 65 or 70, and I'm retired, and maybe I have enough money. Maybe I don't have enough money. Maybe I'm just totally SOL. But I own a house free and clear. What do you think about me pulling a reverse mortgage?
Yeah, so I'm not categorically opposed to reverse mortgages. I do think they have a place. It's not something I generally, suggest to people immediately. One, just because, there is right now kind of a general state of people probably don't understand them. Average Joe, average Jane out there probably doesn't really understand it. And I'm always weary of, having someone try something that they don't understand and they aren't comfortable with. But no, I'm not an anti reverse mortgage guy by any stretch.
Fair enough. I think I think it depends on your situation, but I think there could be some use to it. Like you were saying, it really just depends because, if you're trying to leave your house to all your kids, it might not work out for you. But if you're an older couple who doesn't have anyone to give their inheritance to, screw it. But
yeah. And two, I think so reverse mortgages, annuities fall in that category too. There's good ways to use them and there's really bad ways to use them. And fortunately, I think there has been a propensity in the past to use them in the really bad ways. And so they just kind of get that connotation now. But from an academic standpoint, throw out all the, unscrupulous actors out there, and we're just talking theoretically. Reverse mortgages, I think there are times when it can make sense. So I'm not I've never done one with someone before, but I'm not fundamentally opposed.
Cool. For those of you listening who don't know, the reverse mortgage is essentially like some kind of crazy backwards version of like a HELOC, where you're essentially taking the value of your home and chipping away at it by taking paychecks from the bank. And then you're like eating equity away from the property, but you're living on it. So if you have $1 million home, it could basically act as a $1 million retirement and you're just pulling bits of the equity out. So I hope I explained that at least somewhat okay, but
yeah, no, I think that's the basic idea there. And like you said, you get to live in the home until you pass away. And at that time, your estate can either settle the balance or the bank owns your home, so.
Which honestly could make probate way easier depending on, if the bank just says, yep, that's ours, like, I don't know, maybe that makes probate easy, because probate is not a fun process for a lot of people. And honestly, probate seems to be like, I have several friends who probates their exit strategy for real estate because they know how expensive the taxes are. And they're like, well, if I die and it goes to probate, like, nobody has to pay the taxes on it. So I don't know. Maybe that's anyway. All right. So I know you had a quick real estate story. I want to touch on that because that'd be fun. And then we'll dig into some of these questions and kind of wrap things up.
Cool. Yeah. So my favorite, like I told you, I don't consider myself, people say, hey, are you a real estate investor? No, to me, that implies you're real active and, I bought a couple of real estate, a couple of houses. I've got some rentals, but, don't really consider myself super involved in it. But my favorite real estate story. So my wife and I, we lived in an apartment, I think like the first, 5 years we were married or so, something like that. And we bought a real small duplex, continued to live in our apartment, bought a little duplex, and, rented it for several years. And then when we got pregnant with our first kid, we said, okay, we got to move out of the 1-bedroom apartment. So let's start looking for a house, right? So did the whole house hunt thing. And we finally, and of course, being the finance nerd that I am, I was not looking for, the nice fancy house. I was looking for an opportunity to build some equity. So we were looking for foreclosures. Stumbled across one. It was kind of in one of those, all the houses in the neighborhood are the same kind of deal, very homogenous. This one looks just like that one. So I say that to say, all of those houses in that neighborhood had, within a couple $1,000s, the same value. So, we knew what this house, if it was fixed, had a very good indication of the value that it would have in the market. Well, the foreclosure value was slightly less than half. It was through the HUD program. So, I had like slightly less than half of what we knew the house would appraise for once we got it all fixed up and moved in. So, we got it. Of course, had to place the bid through the realtor and all, but we lost the bid the first time. The number was good. It was like, I don't know how familiar you are with the HUD foreclosure process, but they're real picky about their paperwork and all that. It's kind of notorious for rejecting bids that they're willing to accept, but because the paperwork isn't right, so it got rejected. And the realtor even said something like, hey, this is going to be a terrible process. Are you sure you want to try this again? I was like, lady, I don't think you understand. Instant doubling of my value. Yeah. If you don't want to do it, that's fine, but I'm certainly going to put this bid back in, And so we put it back in, got the bid. And, so we got the house, and it was somewhere around, so this is in Southwest Arkansas, Northeast Texas, Texarkana straddles the state line there. So we're on the Arkansas side, and the house,
right side.
The right side, of course, God's side. So we, the house we got it for like $45,000, put a roughly $5,000 into it, and then it was, going to appraise for, we figured in the 90s, and it ultimately did appraise in the 90s. But when we went and checked it out, it was essentially just cosmetic issues, right? So like hole in the wall, but no serious issues. Like, yeah, just kind of fix this up and we'll be good to go. So while we're over there working on the house, the neighbor comes over and starts talking to my father-in-law. And I never verified the story, but he said it, and it's hilarious to me. So it's part of the story now, whether it's true or not. He said that the couple that the house was foreclosed on, it was a lady, her husband, and her ex-husband that all lived there in the house together. So understanding that, the condition of the house became less surprising to me. There was a middle bedroom. So it was a 3-bedroom house. The middle bedroom they used as a dog kennel.
Oh God.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not talking about like cages and crap in there. I'm talking about like shut the bedroom door. I almost threw up pulling the carpet out of that room. So I mean, you can imagine, right? Like just a demolished house.
Oh yeah.
Looked like the husband and ex-husband probably had several fights in there, but we got it fixed up. Worked on it for about a month, and sure enough, lived in it 2 years, and then we got it refinanced, the cash out refinance, and bought 2 more small rentals. And so, worked out great for us. I would 100%, do that over again. But, as you know, finding deals like that is, not something you're going to do every week.
Yeah, it's getting more difficult as the market rises. But I mean, that's the fundamental rule of real estate, right? Money's made when you buy, and you knew you had to steal when you bought it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So it was awesome. We still have that house, so just kept it as a rental now.
Now you have a place to reverse mortgage in 40 years.
There you go.
So by then they'll probably have some like whole life insurance reverse mortgage on some other somewhat complex strategy thrown together with a huge commission check for someone.
Right.
Anyway, not to condone any of those. There's good and bad strategies to use all of those, but they are the ones with the bad name out there because people buy into the bad ones because they're shiny.
Yep.
All right. Hey, so I always like to ask this, but what is one resource, book, course, website, whatever that I usually ask for real estate, but I told you I wouldn't do that this time, so I'm going to get it right, for finance or retirement strategies that you really enjoy?
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. The book I always suggest when I'm asked that question, A Random Walk Down Wall Street. Hands down, my favorite book on investing and saving. There's some sections in there that talk about retirement plans. Just overall a good book to start with. And it's one of those two. It's a, I don't know what edition it's in now, but several. I think it was originally published, I think in the 70s sometime. So, updated throughout the years. And classic. So you can get it for, a couple bucks on Amazon, but phenomenal book, A Random Walk Down Wall Street.
I will have to check that one out. I have not yet. Awesome. Before we wrap this up, anything you'd like to add? Any parting advice or big ideas?
No, I don't guess so. Just like I said, do something. Certainly learn. I mean, I'm a professor. I'm not telling you don't learn, but I know that message is often unheard, right? Go learn everything you can. Sure, but if you're not going to do that, learn a little bit and then just start doing something. Start saving.
Yeah. There's a lot of power behind just taking action. So awesome. Well, hey, Brandon, where can people get a hold of you?
So you can go to my website, just brandonrenfro.com. Renfro is RENFRO. So brandonrenfro.com. I have a blog there. I write about retirement. Most of the articles that I write are going to be on distribution issues or taxation. So not generally going to be the, hey, how do you save in an IRA or 401k, but on the back end. But if you're curious, that's where you can find me.
If you're not interested in it, you should be, because that's going to be your future, whether you like it or not. Awesome. Brandon, thanks very much for joining us today.
Yeah, man. Glad you had me.
Awesome. This has been fun. Have a great day.
Cool. You too.
Thank you for listening to another episode about my journey from military to millionaire. If you liked it, be sure to visit FromMilitaryToMillionaire.com/podcast to subscribe to future podcasts. While you're there, we'd love for you to rate the show, give us a review on iTunes. Now get out there and take action.